Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's show with SportsbookReview.com. I'm your host, Lee Martin, here to talk UFC. Joining me today, I have SBR's UFC expert, David Manyun, and MMA Mania's lead host, Matt Ryan. Like always, before we get into all the good UFC talk, just go ahead, give us a like, and subscribe to our channel. That way you never miss a show. Now, let's get to it. Before we get into the main card breakdown for this upcoming weekend's fight, like always, I'm just going to go and get a recap and see how the guys did for this past weekend. So this past weekend, we had fight night with Colby Covington and Tyron Woodley. Matt, I'm going to start with you this time. Can you let us know how your weekend went?
Well, we were fairly accurate. We were talking about it before we got on the air. Colby Covington won. Hooray for people's wallets, not so hooray for discourse in society. But when it comes to Colby Covington, put on another masterclass. You can't argue with his skills inside the octagon. He is one of the best in that weight division. Broke Tyron Woodley's ribs. We've seen over his last two victories over Robbie Lawler and over Tyron Woodley, his striking has gotten more proficient. He's become a more well-rounded fighter, and that's dangerous. But Kamaru Usman is still the better fighter and the best fighter at their weight class. So it's hard really to make an argument that he deserves a title shot when the last two guys he beat were handily beaten by Kamaru Usman. You know, it's hard to build your resume off of guys that already lost to the champ. So it's going to be interesting to see if Colby even does get back in the title hunt before next year. Hold on, we're going to wait 17 seconds because we just need to pray for the dude who got knocked out by Shimiev in the same amount of time that he got clocked. So just hold on about 5 more seconds. All right. Jeez, that punch. Dave, I don't know about you, man, but I saw it on Twitter. I looked away, kind of went to go get a sandwich, come back, fight's over. You know, cops are called. It looks like the end of Blazing Saddles. And that man's jaw went from Las Vegas to Henderson. That's how far it went on that shot.
Yeah. Now, how about you, Dave? How did your weekend go?
Yeah, it was great. The Colby prediction, blah, blah, blah. No one cares about that. Chimaev knocked him out in 17 seconds.
Yeah.
17 seconds it took. After all that talk, can he do it? Blah, 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 blah. Look, I've been telling people since the moment he stepped into the UFC is something special. And also everybody wanted to focus on the grappling. Oh, is this going to happen? I told everyone too, he can strike. This guy has been knocking people out. He's been submitting people for a very long time and high-level fighters at that. He is now just doing it on the biggest stage of them all. And I really think his ceiling's high. I don't want them to push him straight into the top 5 right now. Ease him in, you know, let him fight somebody maybe 10 to 15 ranked. And yeah, we could be looking at a champion who may take that title within 12 or 13 UFC fights, which would be it would be something else. In fact, Dominic Reyes could potentially do that this weekend. But the event overall was great. I went 9-4 on my picks.
Nice.
Precise. I got 6 of them precise as well. So I predicted Johnny Walker by knockout, Mackenzie Dern by submission, and then a few others. The main card was great. It really was. I mean, Kevin Holland, Darren Stewart fight, I did expect a bit more from that. I didn't think Randa Marcos was going to give up the submission so early. So fair play to Mackenzie Dern. She locked that in early. But yeah, Johnny Walker, what did I say last week, guys? As I ended my prediction, I says, forget it, Johnny Walker by KO. And that boy, he has done it again. I told everyone he broke his coach's shoulder in training. That power is something else. He doesn't need to have the world's greatest technical ability. All he needs to do is connect. He did. Ryan Spann was dribbling. And here we are now for UFC 253, probably the most anticipated main event that we've had all summer, I'd say.
All right, wonderful. I'm so glad you guys had a wonderful weekend. Now let's move on to this weekend. September 26th, we're back at Yas Island for UFC 253 with Israel Adesanya versus Paulo Costa. Let's just jump into the main card breakdown. So we're going to start off with Featherweight. Hakeem Dawodu versus Zubaira Tukhugov. I can't pronounce these names, so I apologize in advance. Via BetOnline, Tukhugov is -127 and Dawodu is +107. Dave, I'm going to start with you. If you could give us your breakdown and pick for that fight.
Yeah, do you know, this is a good fight. It is a good fight. you would say striker versus grappler matchup, but Tukhugov is all over. He says that he trains at AKA, but don't watch that because this kid, he likes to get about and he likes to broaden his skill set. He's trained at Tiger Muay Thai, and obviously also with Khabib and them killers at American Kickboxing Academy. And he's another Chechnyan fighter, and we know what they're all about. Look, these guys are tough. The Dagestanis, Chechnyans, all of those Confederate Russians, they are masters of hand-to-hand combat and sambo. Near enough all of them are masters for hand-to-hand combat and sambo, which is an incredible skill set to have. Tokugawa himself, he has strong hands, he switches stance, and obviously naturally being from Chechnya, he can wrestle with the best of them. And he's lost one fight in the past 8 years, and that was to a dangerous Brazilian in Renato Moicano. Did he learn from that loss is what I was trying to figure out while I was breaking down his previous fights. And yes, if you watch Tukhugov, when he had a period where he was fighting in the UFC, and then I think it was 2017 or 2018, we didn't see him for 2 years. Mm-hmm. And then he came back and it was like, oh, what's he going to bring to the table? Is he going to do an incredible job? Has he been, honing them skills? And he fought a guy in Leroy Murphy who was 8-0 at the time. And, he didn't look as good as I expected him to after such a long period of time away from, professional competition. I thought he'd have been training real hard with AKA and traveling around and doing what he's doing, but he didn't look as good as I expected him to. And, he did drop him quick. He recovered with the grappling. But my problem with Tukhugov is he tends to get real tired real quick. And I noticed this in his fights, particular. And it's good to notice that this fight was in Abu Dhabi as well. So I'm not sure, if it's going to be hot there, the humidity. But he looked completely depleted against Leroy Murphy. Even though the fight was a draw, I still think, he could have performed better than he should have coming off such a long layoff. Now, in his most recent fight, everything that I was worried about seemed to disappear. His wasted movement, a lot of wasted energy, a lot of hopping around and bouncing around, I think was going against him. And then when he came out, who was his last fight against? His most recent bout,
Julio Arce.
Kevin Aguilar.
Oh, pardon me, yeah.
Yeah, so he knocked him out in the first round and he looked like a completely different fighter. He looked calm, calculated, and he looked like he came to kill. And I hadn't saw that from Tukhugov before. I just hadn't saw that. So now it leads me to believe that this guy has turned a stone. And he had all those skills that a good fighter needs, but he just didn't seem to have that aggression. But just the look on his face, his hair had grew out a bit more in his most recent fight. And he looked a different fighter. Now, Hakeem Dawodu, quite decorated himself. He's gonna have a 5.5 reach advantage, which I think is going to be significant in the striking, and he's going to have the speed and probably the more technical striking advantage. Grappling disadvantage is a Canadian. He trains out of Champions Creed MMA in Calgary, and it's a fun fact to note that he's got the highest significant strike differential in UFC featherweight history. That's hard to compare a guy like him and Conor McGregor when the level of competition they're for is miles apart. I understand, but he still has that record. But with all that said, when you look at the guys he's fought, 1-4 Austin Arnett, 2-5 Kyle Bochniak, Yashori Hori got dropped by the UFC. Julio Arce is probably the only decent record that Dawodu has beat, and I'm not sold on him just yet. I think he's really good at striking at distance and in the pocket. He's really fast, but I just don't think he's got enough experience. And I think a guy like Tukhugov can catch him and potentially even finish him, because Hakeem's one loss was to Scotsman Danny Henry, and Danny Henry dropped him quick. And Danny Henry he's not known for anything. And most people won't even know who I'm talking about. But, Danny Henry dropped him quick and he got a guillotine on him. And Dawodu, he just didn't do nothing. And since then, he's just fought low level of competition. So it's hard for me to gauge a good read-in where I'm going to take my money and lay it on him. Now, looking at the odds, they look good for me for Tukhugov, especially if you just look at his recent fight compared to those prior. He just looks like a different guy. And I think he's ready. to join his Chechnyan brothers up there, celebrating win after win, dominating performance after dominating performance. So my pick is going to be Tukhugov. And I want to say by decision, but with Dawodu's chin dropping against Danny Henry the way it did, I would not be surprised if Tukhugov dropped him quick, because he's got some stone in them hands, that's for sure.
And I'm sure the public is on Tukhugov as well, because yesterday I was looking and he was at -115. Now he's -127. So Matt, how about you? What's your breakdown and pick for that fight?
All right. Dave basically ran through everything that you kind of need to know about this fight. But to give some background on Tukhugov's 3-year sojourn from fighting, back in 2016, he was popped for testing positive for Osterine. So that's why we didn't see him for about 18 to 24 months. And then if you remember the great brawl inside the T-Mobile Arena at the end of Conor and Khabib, Tukhugov was one of the dudes jumping in the cage, getting involved in what looked and felt like a mosh pit and or some sort of military skirmish. But when you look at Tukhugov, and you were talking about his fight in September where he looked really tired, really ragged, and went to a draw, that fight was on Yas Island. It was in the UAE. It was in Dubai, which is where we're going to be this Saturday night for UFC. We look at all those variables, and you see a guy like Dawodu who's on a 4-fight winning streak, 4 wins in his last 5, all but one by decision. So this is a guy who can go the full 15 minutes. You said he's training up in Canada, so the shift in atmosphere, the shift in weather, also the shift in time and day could play a factor into this fight. Tukhugov is someone who's used to that shifting time, especially if he's training at AKA and going back to Russia. But the heat, the humidity, it's the exact same time of year, exact same conditions. We don't know how the fight island of it all is going to play into it because of the different venues. But I'm staying away from picking a winner in this fight or laying anything down. Dawodu can get the win here, but Tukhugov is on quite a run. He is a hell of a fighter. I can expect him to finish it inside the distance, but if we head into the 3rd round, it's going to get a little iffy, get a little tricky, and that's going to be where the gas tanks really come in.
All right. Well, if you guys want to get in on that fight again via BetOnline, Tukhugov is -127 and Dawodu is +107. Let's move on to the next fight. Every single time there's a women's bantamweight, women's bantamweight, Ketlen Vera versus Sijara Eubanks. Vieira is -175 and Eubanks is +150. My girl, Matt, I'm going to continue with you. If you can give us your breakdown and pick for that fight.
Well, Ketlen Vera walking into her last fight was 10-0. Coming out of that fight, she had her chin checked. She's 10-1 now. She's going up against a fighter in Sijara Eubanks who's fighting for the 2nd time in less than a month. 2 weeks ago, we saw her beat Julia Avila by decision, but now she has to travel from the United States to Yas Island, go through all those protocols again, but she is still in fighting shape. So when you look at Eubanks, she was on a 2-fight winning streak with wins over Moraes and Avila. But when she stepped up in the past, she suffered losses to Aspinlad and Blachowicz. I know Eubanks is your girl, Lee, but when you look at that, when she steps up in competition, you got to wonder if those fights on short notice, with all the pressure being on a pay-per-view main card, which is a complete shift from an ESPN card, different kind of level, different kind of energy, and having to stay on weight and be able to transfer your energy, transfer the time, dealing with all the changes going from the States to Yas Island. There's a lot of question marks there. And also, she's taking this fight in short notice. This is a big, big question mark for Vieira as well. She was supposed to fight Renault back in September on the 27th, this coming Saturday, but Renault was pulled with an injury. Eubanks stepping up, stepping right in. Dave, you can break down more how the fighting styles are different, but when you're preparing for a fighter and then, less than a month out, you have that completely shift. That can change everything and creates a ton of question marks in this fight. If I'm looking at it here, I'm going with Vieira because she's the healthier fighter. She was preparing to go to Yas Island. She had all the tools to get ready. This big, change places, basically Mad Hattering on the card can be a huge question mark, and you want to root for Eubanks, especially fighting twice in 2 weeks. She's a gamer, she's a fighter, she knows what she's doing. but too many question marks for me here. I would go with Vieira, and I'm going to go by decision.
All right, Dave, do you agree with Matt, or what's your take on Vera versus Eubanks?
See, the problem for me is I've constantly been barking up the wrong tree when it comes to Sijara Eubanks. That is all I do. I predict her fights wrong. And look, I think more than anything, it's the loss to Beshko Heya. It clouds my judgment. It does. And look, Sijara's recent outings, she's slowly converting me. I'm not gonna lie. She's a tough girl, and that's one thing that can prevail in the women's divisions, because it isn't at the level as the man's is, because it's not as old. It's still young in the sport for the women, and that when you get a tough fight, a toughness can prevail, just like Diego Sanchez's toughness would prevail back in the day. And I see that. I do see that with Sijara. However, look, I'm just between a rock and a hard place, because Ketlen Vieira's run, it wasn't a fluke, but it took her so long. The girl has been in the UFC for 5 years, and it's like she just picks up one fight per year. I just don't know with Ketlen Vieira. It's hard to read a girl who hasn't fought really any of the modern day fighters. I mean, look, take away Irene Aldana, who she lost to. Who has she fought? Kat Zingano, Sarah McMahon, and I can't remember the others, but
those are the two biggest.
They're all old style of fighters, and I'm just not sure that Ketlen's going to have much to offer here. It's just hard to judge her in today's climate of women's MMA. Like I said, I don't think she's going to have a striking advantage on Eubanks, even with that huge reach that she's going to have. And Eubanks she's been active, and look, she's been winning, and she's been grinding it out. I think I'm gonna go with Eubanks. Gave Eubanks out on one of my articles because of the price, and that was a price play. Now, if those odds have gone, what are the current odds at now? We have
Eubanks is plus 150, Vera is minus 175.
Okay, yeah. See, 150 is fine, and I think anything lower would avoid it, because Eubanks opened up in the 200s, and everyone hammered her, and there was nothing to bet on that. You could get $50 on her, yippee do. Like, there was nothing to bet on her. There's no liquidity in the market that early. You can't do anything with that. So I didn't get the 250 price, which I'd have liked to. The 150, I can't go against her again. It's going to bite me in the butt. I know it is. If Vieira cannot spam the takedown and keep Eubanks held to the ground for 15 minutes, then I think we're just going to be in for a striking mismatch. Vieira's lack of activity is the concern for me. And after such long periods away from the cage, she returned and fought Irene Aldana and got knocked out. So look, Eubanks doesn't have that beautiful 10-1 record. But she's been actively winning fights. She's been fighting the newer generation of fighters, and another underdog. She's coming in as the underdog again, and I'm going to take her this time. But I will say that I will be only putting half a unit on, just because of some of the things that Matt mentioned. It seems like when Sijara does get a bigger name fight, she seems to bottle it, but at the same time, you also have to remember she's kind of been growing up in the UFC, and she's spent most of her professional fights have been in the UFC. I think, did she have like 2 fights before being signed to the UFC? So it's just one of them situations where her record's ugly, but she's definitely tougher than her record would have you think. So yeah, it's Sijara Eubanks for me. I think I gave her on one of my articles plus 145. I wouldn't take her any lower than that. But yeah, if I'm not sure if you should even wait, because the money could come in on Ketlen. So when it's hanging around this price, I mean, I'm looking at the books now. It's ranging from 160. Some books you can get it at. Be sure to do shopping at Sportsbook Review, because they'll give you the best odds. Yeah. But right now, the highest you can get is 166, and the lowest is 140. Sorry. So there's a 20-point difference. That's why it's important to shop for your odds. That's what we do at Sportsbook Review. So
Yeah.
Just go to that page if you've got shopping problems for your odds. And as I said, don't go lower than 140 because the value is just going and going and going. But I expect maybe a slight increase in that before fight day because I'm not sure as many people would have confidence in Eubanks as we do.
Yeah, I took Sijara at plus 155 because that looked very nice to me, so I just took it. All right, well, if you guys want to get in on that fight, again, via BetOnline, Vieira is minus 175 and Eubanks is plus 150. Let's move on to the next fight. We have Flyweight Kai Kara-France versus Brandon Royval. France is minus 226 and Royval is plus 191. Matt, I'm going to start with you if you can give us your breakdown and pick for that fight.
Oh, baby. I love this fight for one reason. We've got the two most MMA names out of anyone on this card. Kai Kara-France and Brandon Royval. They sound like villains from an 80s movie, and I'm all here for it. Royval wins the battle because of his nickname, which is Raw Dog, which is spelled D-A-W-G, because how else would you spell the nickname of someone who calls himself Raw Dog? Royval's on a 3-fight winning streak, which includes his UFC debut against Tim Elliott back in May. His only career losses have come by way of decision. If we talk about the Eubanks fight for a second, the deeper this fight goes, Royval fighting for the first time in a unique set of elements like the UAE can be a huge question mark for him. Kai Kara-France, who trains with Israel Adesanya, we were talking about this off air. He is one of those guys who fought all around the world. He's 4-1 of his last 5, all by decision. So the deeper this fight goes, the better it is for Kai Kara-France. His last loss was back in December to Brandon Moreno. His last win was back in February when the world wasn't on fire against Tyson Nam. He's been knocked out twice and submitted twice, so you can catch him. You can catch France. When you're looking at Royval, his last 3 wins were all by submission. 2 arm bars and an arm triangle. So this guy's going to be looking for the arm, looking to take the submission. He has 7 wins by submission, 3 of them by knockout and TKO, 1 win by decision. If I'm looking at this pragmatically, I give France a little bit of the edge because Royval has a bunch of question marks when it comes to fighting outside of the United States, fighting in a unique atmosphere, fighting in what could be the hottest weather he's ever dealt with. If we look back last year to the UFC card in the UAE and we look at some of the Fight Island cards, it's really warm. It's going to be early in the morning there in Dubai. It's not going to be in the evening when it's cooler. It's going to be when the sun begins to rise. That humidity is going to begin to rise. And with all the lights and everything going on, Royval might get caught. He might get okey-doked in a situation like that. I want to give it to France, but Royval's intangibles are too good. It's a hard fight for me to pick. If we're going to go into the later rounds, if we get into round 3, I'm taking France by decision, but I think Royval can catch him early with a submission. So look out for a submission from Royval within the first 2 rounds. But if it's going into the 3rd round, I would go with France by decision.
All right. Well, Dave, do you agree with Matt, or do you have a different take on that fight? Again, I'll read you the odds. France is minus 226 and Royval is plus 191.
Yeah, oh God, it's tough, man. Because look, do you know, I have a lot of respect for City Kickboxing as a gym as a whole. That gym, they broke records in 2018, 2019, and, you know, it looks like they're going to continue to do so in 2020, especially if Israel continues his dominance. And now, Kai is a tough one, and look, genetics is a bitch because 5'4", it's rough. It's rough. A 5'8", 5'9", featherweight Kai, I feel, could be a lot more successful with his striking. And now he's gonna fight a guy this is a striker versus a jiu-jitsu fighter. That's what we're gonna see. Kai is the deserving favorite. Kai should win. On paper, Kai should win. He does have good takedown defense, but it's also not impossible to get him down. And the size discrepancy being so large, it's a worry for me with a guy who's so skilled on the floor and can lock up a submission so quick. Striker versus jiu-jitsu. We have to think how many black belts has Kai handled before, and the only one that came to mind was Raul and Paiva. And look, that was a close fight. And if it wasn't in Australia, I'm pretty sure Paiva would have been handed the win there. It's a very similar sort of fight. And with those odds, I mean, what are they set at now? We're looking at Kai Kara France at 240 at some books. You can get him 220. But let's just go with the highest odd I see. So minus 240, that's that means you're giving him a 70%, around 70%, 70.5%. That's an implied probability of him winning. So that's 7 times out of 10. I don't think so. I don't think that's the case here. He's got more experience, yes. He's the better striker, in my opinion, yes. But can he avoid being taken down? And can he avoid them scrambles and submission attempts for 15 minutes? I'm not so sure. I mean, it's rough for Kai because he's such a good fighter. But as I mentioned, he's really small. And it's rough for him. Although he does get the W's, a few split decisions. That Raul Paiva sticks with me. That's close split decision. I think he's had a few other close split decisions as well, or close fights. I'm not betting this fight at all. Look, curiosity killed the cat, and I'm just going to enjoy this one. For me, I'd probably say over. Over for the pure reason that as much as Royval is a black belt and I think he can lock a submission, I'd probably see that in the third later towards the end of the fight. I don't expect it quick and early. Kai trains with the best, some of the best in the world. And although he does, I think he's been submitted a couple of times. It hasn't been like in recent times. I think it's been over 5-6 years, maybe even longer since Kai has been submitted. So I don't know what the odds are on the overs, but if you're desperate for a bet on this fight, I think you're going to get some value on the overs, definitely. Especially, I think you'd be able to get the over 1.5 around between 200 and 300, which is a beautiful parlay piece in my opinion. So in terms of a side, it's a huge stay away. It's a striker versus jiu-jitsu match where they're both good at what they do. So it could go either way. If Kai can spam them takedowns and knock that confidence of Royval and his grappling exchanges, I think maybe he can sail to a unanimous decision. But on the other end of that, as Matt mentioned, Royval, there's too many tangibles, too many probables that we just don't know yet. So when it comes to picking a side, I'm off. But enjoy the fight because I do think it will be a good one.
All right, I'm checking BetOnline and they have over 2.5 at minus 170. So.
Well, there you go. If the over 2.5 is minus 170, as I said, the over 1.5, if it hasn't been released yet, you're going to be looking at between 200 and 300 probably, which is great for an over 1.5. It really is. So yeah, that might be a parlay piece for me by the end of the week.
All right, great. Well, if you guys want to get in on this fight again, France is minus 226 and Royval is plus 191. Let's move on to the next fight. We have light heavyweight Dominic Reyes versus Jan Blachowicz. Reyes is minus 275 and Blachowicz is plus 235. Dave, I'm going to continue with you if you can give us your breakdown and pick for that fight.
Yeah, Jan Blachowicz, he is really the dark horse of the light heavyweight division, earning himself a title opportunity, which I guess it was a certain amount of luck was involved, because if John Jones hadn't have relinquished that title, number 2 ranked Jan might have not been getting that shot. We don't know. He could have been put against someone else, lost, and that opportunity might have never came for him. But he's here. He's got it. He's had a long and prosperous career in martial arts, way before he even joined the UFC. When the UFC picked him up, he had a 17-2 record fighting in Europe. He's a tough dude, and he's now fighting the younger, hungrier guy, in my opinion. For Blachowicz to win this fight, I think he's going to have to put Reyes out. I can't see him standing the test of time with Reyes across these 25 minutes. The younger, the harder hitter, in my opinion, the faster, more proficient striker. I mean, who else is? I mean, I know the Gus John Jones fight, had heavy debate, and there hasn't been anyone other than Gus that's came that close to taking that title from John Jones. Dom Reyes was there for the entire fight, in his face, giving it him back. And some people believe that Dom should have that title now and he should have decrowned John. And Blachowicz is, look, as I said, I think he's just going to have to come out and do some madness. Quick sub, quick KO. But the problem is I don't expect him to do that. I expect him to enter this fight with caution and not throw it all. But I expect both men to come out and be hesitant in the first round. Testing their ranges, testing each other's strength, maybe a little tussle in the clinch. But by the end of it, I think we're going to see Dom Reyes take the bout that some people think he should already have. And I think that with a 25-minute time slot, them hands are mean and them hands are precise. Power, the speed, and the youth will prevail for me. This kid is he is something special. He truly is. He was there with John the entire time, and was ready. He looked ready to do another 5 rounds, in my opinion. I struggle to see this fight. I do struggle to see Blachowicz getting a knockout or a submission against a seemingly unbreakable Dominic Reyes, because nobody has broke this kid, and I don't think Jan Blachowicz is the guy to do it, even though he does have the skills to put people out. I just don't think Dom's the guy. Not this year, not this month, and not at UFC 253. The odds are a bit steep, but I think you're pretty safe with Dom this week. I'm not sure what they opened at. And if you want a bit more value, I do think Reyes is going to get it done inside the distance. I think he's going to knock him out. His counter-striking, moving backwards, as we saw against Chris Weidman, absolutely incredible. His pressuring, moving forward with his striking offense, the same. Really damn good. The only guy that seemed to not struggle, John Jones and Volkan Oezdemir. I think the only two that made Dom look like a normal person, really. Other than that, he's looked incredible. And similar to Johnny Walker last week, as I mentioned, that's that power, that one hit and make them quit power is there. It's all there for Dominic Reyes, and I think he can put Jan Blachowicz out this weekend.
All right. Well, Matt, do you agree with Dave, or do you have a different take on the Reyes versus Blachowicz fight?
This should have been a title fight no matter what, because Dom Reyes got robbed. My dog agrees with me. The people agree with me. The judges do not agree with me, but that is a point beyond comparison. The rightful and uncrowned light heavyweight champion will ascend to his throne on Saturday night on Yas Island. Blachowicz has 3 straight wins. He knocked out Corey Anderson. Olive knows it. Luke Rockhold, he knocked out. He went to decision with Jacare Souza. His last loss was a TKO by Thiago Santos. But you look at Dom Reyes, had a 12-win streak that lasted his entire career, derailed by that last fight against John Jones. Chris Weidman, Volkan Oezdemir, OSP, and Jared Cannonier knocked out 7 opponents on that stretch, submitted 2, 3 by decision. I feel like this fight's not going to go all 5 rounds. I believe that Dom Reyes is going to get the title. He's going to get it within the 3rd or 4th round, and we're going to see a stoppage on Saturday night unless Volkan Oezdemir comes loaded for bear like a Terrell Pryor fight in the 80s and just checks the chin of Dom Reyes.
All right. Well, if you guys want to get on that fight, going to be a BetOnline Reyes -275 and Blachowicz is +235. Let's move on to the main event. We have middleweight, the last style bender, Israel Adesanya versus Paulo Costa. We have BetOnline, Adesanya is -179 and Costa is +154. Matt, I'm going to continue with you if you'd like to give us your breakdown and pick for the main event.
Israel Adesanya may be the greatest mixed martial artist of this generation. You look at his resume, you look at who he's defeated. Yoel Romero, he finished Robert Whittaker. He pretty much was the peak point of Robert Whittaker's career. And he defeated Anderson Silva, who, for anybody who grew up in the 2000s, is one of the and I don't like Mount Rushmores, but he is one of those guys that the 4 pillars, if you're an All Japan Pro Wrestling fan, of mixed martial arts in the 2000s, and he beat him by decision on no notice. So you look at all that, you look at the fact that he brings it. He brings that effort. He brings that energy. He brings the fight to you in a main event, by the way. He had 5 straight performance bonuses before this last fight, his first title defense. And the win over Yoel Romero, it wasn't his greatest showing. It wasn't his greatest outing, but he's facing a similar fighter in Paulo Costa. Costa is a great fighter. 5 of his last 6 wins have come by TKO. But Adesanya's kickboxing experience, he knows how to fight. He knows how to stand and trade. He knows how to keep distance. And this is a bigger cage. We're in a bigger cage now, so he'll be able to move around. He'll have the distance. If this fight was in Vegas, we probably are having a different conversation altogether. Costa has 2 straight performance of the night bonuses. And here's an interesting note. Obviously, both of these guys are undefeated walking into Saturday night. But Costa's last 2 fights have ended by KO or TKO. So you know he's going to go head hunting on Saturday. You saw the energy between the 2 of them at the end of the Adesanya-Romero fight. Costa wanted to jump in there and throw hands right then and there. He's angry. He says he wants to kill Adesanya, and that is what Adesanya wants. He is everything Colby Covington wishes he was in a troll, because he gets underneath their skin and he plays them like a fiddle. He's got that John Jones ability of getting inside an opponent's head before fight night, finding and articulating a weakness, and just matriculating the ball downfield like it's Hank Stram at Super Bowl IV. I see Israel Adesanya maintaining that title. He's going to walk out the middleweight champion, and we're going to probably see him move up in the near future.
All right, Dave, I'm going to read you the odds again. It's Adesanya minus 179 and Costa plus 154. Do you have a different take on the main event than Matt? What is your main breakdown and pick for the main event?
This is tough for me because I have been high on both fighters. I have bet them in every fight they've had. They have won me lots of money. And now I have to, well, I don't have to, but you know, I'm gonna, it's the main event. I'm a degenerate gambler. I'm gonna be betting on this fight, and I'm going with Stylebender. There you go. Let's get that out of the way. Look, Paulo Costa is a scary man. Okay, there's been one person that hasn't been knocked out by him, and that was the Soldier of God, who's basically like a Cuban Hulk. He was the only guy that didn't get knocked out by Costa. But now he's fighting a guy in Adesanya whose striking ability is so far up there. You need to be special to either, 1, not get yourself knocked out, and 2, just be able to get on the inside and land that knockout blow that he needs. It's not going to be easy. The boxing record 5-1, kickboxing combined amateur and professional was 75-5, mixed martial arts 19-0. A combined combat record of 99-6 for Israel Adesanya. I mean, if that's not decorated, then I don't know what is. Is Paulo Costa going to come through with his 12 fight MMA experience and take out Adesanya? Probably not. It's power, it's brute, it's force, aggression. That's what will win the fight for Costa. A knockout, an early knockout, may I add, is what's going to be needed. That's where his advantages are. That's his shot. Now, with that said, he holds a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. That would be interesting. It would be an interesting route. And to be honest, if I was his coaches and I was his team, and that barrage that he's going to come out with, we know it's going to happen. He's going to come out, go crazy. If that doesn't work and that fails him, then why not attempt some takedowns and some jiu-jitsu? Because I'm sure as hell I wouldn't want them arms around me choking my neck, and I'm pretty sure that, the slim frame of Israel Adesanya wouldn't want that either. But that's an interesting, an interesting path in the fight that Costa could take. Is he going to do that? Probably not. Look at his record. He knocked everyone out. The only person he didn't knock out was Yoel Romero, and so that's his path to victory. Knockout. He needs to put Adesanya out, and he needs to put him out quick. Whereas Adesanya, we already know what he needs to do. Weather the storm. Muscle mass is no good in a 5-round fight. So Yes, Costa does knock people out in the first round, and yes, he is a lot stronger than the majority of his opponents. He comes in chiseled like some Greek god, but in terms of going across 25 minutes with another man standing there throwing a high output of strikes to your face and to your body, the more muscle, the worse for Costa. And we have seen Costa, if you go on my Twitter and you check a video of him, the Ultimate Fighter, I think it was Ultimate Fighter Brazil. At the end of the fight, the kid collapsed to the floor. Now, this was a 15-minute fight. He collapses to the floor and he can't breathe. His coaches are saying, stand up, Paulo, Borrachino, stand up, and nothing. So his gas tank worries me, especially in a 5-round championship fight against a guy in Israel who's done it all within the space of 2 years. The kid is incredible. We haven't seen somebody like this for a while, and dare I say it, as Matt say, he is the new age Anderson Silva. Anderson Silva was his idol. He looked up to him. It's no surprise that he has a similar, I won't say the same, but a similar striking style. It's all Adesanya for me. Sorry. The risk. Look, there's value on either side when you look at it on paper. There is value on either side because Costa is undefeated and he is coming in at, what's he at now? Plus 145, did you say? Plus 150. Yeah, you can get him at 155 at some books. And look, for an undefeated fighter who nobody has stopped yet, that's all right with me. But back at it with Israel, he is also an undefeated fighter. The difference is his experience. Is the fighters he's fought have a higher experience. He's defeated the guy like Robert Whittaker. We didn't expect him to knock it out. We also didn't expect Israel to come out, close his eyes and swing. We didn't expect that type of fight from Israel. But he came out, did it, and it worked. He knocked out the stronger, tougher, more brute fighter. It smells similar. And I don't get fazed by muscle and aggression. I prefer skill, technique, and speed, and that's exactly what Israel Adesanya has. So yeah, Israel Adesanya for the win. Also, I would also be looking at the overs because I don't think the only chance of this ending in the first round, I think, is if Paulo comes out and has his way. I don't think we'll see a counter strike land and put Costa out. I just don't see it. So yeah, maybe the overs, if they hold any value, could be a look in if you're a bit worried about taking the side. And straight away, I'm looking minus 140 on the over 2.5, minus 250 on the over 1.5. See, that's a price that I really do like. The over 1.5 rounds. So you got 7.5 minutes to wait. Look at the Israel Yoel fight. We don't know what's going to happen. There could be a lot of hesitancy, although you shouldn't expect it with Paulo. This is a title fight. He's never been in a title fight in the UFC. He's never had this shot. So it's all well and good, expecting him to go crazy, but there's still the chance that he doesn't. That would support that type of over 100%, and you'd be rubbing your hands if you see any sort of hesitancy from Costa. But at the same time, if he comes out how he usually does, it'd be a worrisome fight to wait on. But yeah, as I said, it's all Israel Adesanya for the win in this week's main event. I'm so hyped for this fight.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you guys. If you guys want to get in on that fight, again, Adesanya is minus 179 and Costa is plus 154. And that is all that we have for our main card breakdown for UFC 253, Israel Adesanya versus Paulo Costa. If you are not following the guys on Twitter, be sure to give them a follow. You can follow Dave at @dmanyun_, and you can follow Matt at @mryan consulting. And also give SBR a follow on Twitter and Instagram at SBR Sports Picks. And if you don't want to miss a show with us, then definitely give this video a like and subscribe to our channel. Again, thank you guys so much for dropping your knowledge and joining me today. I wish you all the best of luck for this weekend, and I'll see you next week. Bye, Olive.